when people talk about PR, it's a mixed bag. Like sometimes PR works to get an initial influx and then it kind of tapers off. After we had this launch, while we did have like an initial spike of interest and then it waned, we found that it actually gave a really big bump to the number of signups and eventually like, the activations in our product because people were now really trusting us enough without the need for promos actually deposit funds and then get to the moment and withdraw.
Welcome to Taste and Tactics, where founders and go-to-market leaders share how they brought their boldest ideas to life. From concept to execution, we cover every step behind these iconic launches. Join me each week for both inspiration and actionable tips. I'm Shriya Nevatia. Let's dive in.
Hi, Mika. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm so excited to have you here because we've known each other for so long.
Yeah, so long. I'm so excited to be here.
Yay. So, okay, today we're going to talk about something really interesting where you had scammers in your very first launch. And so let's just kind of dive into it. So who are you and tell us about your startup?
Yeah, I'm Mika, founder and CEO of Parallax. And so what we did at Parallax, we're a stablecoin payments company. So we had our own self-custodial wallet. We competed with the likes of Wise, PayPal, Payoneer. And so we help people, for example, in the Philippines, which is where I was born and raised. If they were receiving payments from clients and employers in the US, they could create a Parallax account and receive payments from these US employers via ACH or wire. And it arrives in their Parallax account, all using stablecoins under the hood, and then they can withdraw to their peso PHP accounts. So we had a bunch of users from the Philippines, Argentina, basically all over the world. And I'm excited to talk about the scammers that came into our product before our launch.
And it sounds like many of the users were like in a place where the local currency might be less stable, and so they specifically wanted this kind of thing. And then there were a lot of remote workers.
Yes, exactly. So it was two major reasons. One was the inflation. We had a lot of users from Argentina, for example, and they wanted to use USDC stablecoin as a hedge against their currency. The second was also we're effectively helping workers, remote workers, get their payments faster and cheaper, where PayPal, Payoneer, all these companies had very, very high percentage cuts to basically the amounts that these workers were receiving. So our hypothesis was that stablecoins was going to be able to provide faster and cheaper payments. We basically were able to save costs with stablecoins and with our self-custodial wallets and pass those savings on to our users.
Awesome. Yeah, that was I got to be on the other side of it when I hired a little EA, chief of staff in India. And I was like, oh God, this is terrible. So, okay, tell us about what we're talking about today. Just like a little overview of the scam.
Yes. It's an exciting one. This was in September of 2023. This is our public launch of Parallax. What happened was we had already worked with a reporter. We were going to be launching, I could say, mid-September. And the week before our launch, we worked on this promo and we're trying to focus on activations for our product. The week before our launch, we saw a bunch of scammers come in and basically drain our promo accounts and bypass all of our security and KYC checks. And so I'll talk about what exactly happened, why did this all happen, and all the lessons that came in between.
Yeah, crazy. Okay, let's go into kind of the idea behind it. So why did you do this specific promo and how'd you set it up?
Yeah. So in September 2023, we were at the point where we built out our core infrastructure. We were onboarding a bunch of new users, and our core problem was really activation. So product, as any fintech product, you have to KYC. And so there's a hefty onboarding process. We saw that a lot of people were KYCing and onboarding, but dropped off because it took a while for them to feel the aha moment. And for us, the aha moment was when they actually got to withdraw into their peso accounts, into their local currency accounts, right? Because then they're like, oh, wow, this is super fast and super cheap compared to all the other alternatives that we're using. The problem is to withdraw, you also need to deposit.
Yes.
And this just took a really long time. So they first had to tell their employers that they needed to receive a deposit or change their receiving accounts on Gusto, Deal, all these payroll platforms. And then once that happened, they had to wait about 1 to 3 business days at the minimum before they actually receive a deposit, just because ACH and wire transfers take a really long time. By that time, this is many steps, and by that time, a lot of people already dropped off because they're like, "Is this even worth all this effort?"
Mm-hmm.
So we were like, "Okay, well, why don't we try to bypass the deposit process?" And we basically give them a promo, which is not unlike other promos, like PayPal did this, Coin have done, free $10 upon signing up or upon KYCing. So you're like, okay, let's bypass the deposit process, give them these $10 at the time. And we really had no data, right? So we just thought of a good, nice round number, and then they can easily withdraw and feel that aha moment. So we actually did, we went through this process. We tested it with a couple of our early users, and it went well. It was helping our activations initially.
Mm-hmm.
Until the week before our launch. And so what happened was at some point, word got out to all these different and there was a group of folks, I believe they were from Argentina. A lot of it is anonymous, right? What happened was at 11 a.m. in the morning, a week before, I just so happened to be looking at our Slack channel where we saw a bunch of alerts, where we saw people signing up. And I was like, there's a set of names that keeps popping up. Same user, the name was Nicholas Robles, or there was one called Cassandra Niz, Maria Forte. There were all these users, they had the same names, and they were signing up and creating new accounts. What was happening? I started to investigate and saw that the promo account, or the account that we used to send out promos, basically went from, there was like $2,000 in there to $0. So they basically drained our promo account. And they were KYCing with the same IDs, same identities, and bypassing our KYC checks and coming into our platform and basically trying to game the system and get these $10. I messaged my co-founder. This is at 11 a.m. So they actually started draining our accounts the night prior. So this was, I think the first one was at 12 midnight. I was asleep and only saw it later on when I just so happened to be checking our alerts. Messaged my co-founder and he verified, looks like we have a case of scammers coming to our accounts. We created a Slack channel, brought the team together, pushed this, we call it the big red button, and stopped all transactions until we could mitigate the issue, and started to talk about what happened and figure out what the next steps are to mitigate these scammers coming to our platform.
What were some of the KYC checks? Because I've even done the things before where, like, you have to take a selfie holding the ID. Like, you do the front and back of the ID, and then you also, like, take this thing. How do they bypass it?
Yeah. So we did a whole retro in this. The root cause of why we think all of this happened was because our KYC checks were really bad. And part of the problem was we at the time worked with a vendor that we should have done more verifications with, right? So we worked with the vendor, we outsourced the KYC, and we're collaborating with them on our KYC. And they had the basic KYC process. So they collected name, address, date of birth, they collected a government ID and did some checks on that. But if you dig in closer, there were certain things that they should have also been cross-checking. So they actually didn't do what we call liveness check, right? Like take a picture with the ID or take a selfie and then we'll match the face with ID.
Yeah.
They just did the ID part. But they didn't do basic things like verify if the address was actually a legitimate address.
But did they make up a lot? Was that something that happened and fabricated? Okay.
We saw a lot of gibberish in address. Or they didn't check if an ID that was already in our system was used in another account.
That was what I was going to ask. Yeah, because it also seems like pretty dumb for a scammer to use the same handful of names. Like, really?
Yeah.
I feel like I've had friends try to get 4 promos from like a fitness place, and like that's the most basic thing you do.
I know.
Change your name.
Yeah, but now looking back, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe we didn't even check if they had these checks. I think a lot was like we assumed, okay, they have this KYC process. They're doing this with a bunch of customers, and you're like, okay, we'll trust that the KYC process is also great.
They continue to exist.
They
They
could
clearly haven't had everything drained.
questionable. Yeah, later on, they eventually stopped running as a company, and I think I know why. But yeah, that was part of the lesson was like trust but verify. We trusted their KYC checks, but we should have also really dug into how robust everything was, because especially as a fintech company, that's like the bread and butter of what we need to be doing to prevent bad actors from coming in.
Okay, so let's go step by step with how you solved this. So if you already were working with that vendor, could you switch vendors the week before, or did you have to layer in your own checks within your product?
Yeah, it's a bit complicated to own our own KYC. Eventually, like, the long-term solution was to own our own KYC, and we eventually did, as it's a register as a money service business and do all these compliance checks but the most immediate thing was we are going to launch in the next week, and we can't have this happen once we do our big launch. And so a couple of the mitigations we did most immediately was we paused all transactions, and we paused all signups until fix everything. That was maybe like a downtime of about 1 to 2 hours.
Not too bad since it was pre-launch.
Exactly.
Yeah, you weren't officially out.
It wasn't too bad. Other immediate mitigations just within the next day, so we could next hour or next day, so we could get signups back up, is we turned our promos into something more manual. So initially we made it really automatic because you're like trying to solve the activation problem. We wanted to make it quick for them to get to that aha moment. Instead, they had to sort of request, I want this promo. Do manual checks initially to mitigate these cameras from coming in.
Especially if there's like some of what they did was like pretty basic for you to just literally match names, addresses. You didn't need the whole processing of IDs, and verification.
So yeah, we did that manually. Eventually we automated some pieces of it, but just initially for the day or the next week, we wanted to get something in quick. So manual reviews of promos. We did embed some KYC checks on top of what our vendor already had. So we did talk to our vendor and gave all this feedback and collaborated with them in some quick fixes, which included address verification, which seems so basic, but that became a part of it. We did phone verifications as well, which again should have been a part of the process, but alas, phone verifications, this one was more on our end. We used Twilio to make that a part of the process. We did some basic matching, so basic name matching on if you have the same name, Nicholas Robles, then you should not have the same, you should not be able
address or something. Yeah.
So we had a bunch of logic gates there to at least mitigate the patterns that we were seeing with these bad actors. And then we also, again, they were using the same names, right? So it was actually quite easy for us to just be like, okay, anyone whose name is Nicholas Robles or Cassandra Inez or Maria Forte cannot go through our KYC. And it's funny, it's because it became a meme in our company. Like in the next offsite, we had name tags and our names were Nicholas Robles. It became kind of like a funny thing later on.
And that's what you named the Slack channel, right?
That's what we named the Slack channel, yeah.
The like all hands on deck to solve this.
Exactly. Yeah. That was
Which I love.
Last few things. We capped the uploads of the same ID. So we use the same ID. And then we did an email domain check. So there are certain email domains that you can create a dummy email, basically, in certain websites. So if you had that domain, then you couldn't go through our checks.
Awesome. And so then, to verify that this was working and helping, it happened again. It happened again.
Yeah. So it was a good thing that it happened the week before.
Yeah.
Because it allowed us to really strengthen our onboarding process, make it actually slightly more user-friendly as well, while putting in these checks to prevent bad actors from coming in. So the day before our launch, we saw another wave of scammers come in. Same MO, different name, but same.
Okay, it wasn't. I was like, I wonder if someone was bold enough to say Nicholas Robles again.
They're not tired yet. No, they use different names, but the difference was we were able to catch them. So maybe like 3 to 5 people were able to bypass the KYC. They use different IDs. They found a way to game it, but no one actually got the promo anymore because we did the manual checks.
So you found those 3 to 5.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
We were able to put in additional rules so we could prevent similar folks from coming in as well. So if they use the same name, then we just put them in our database of names that were banned. But yeah, we knew it was the same MO because they were using the same names and doing the whole sign up process and putting in the gibberish, like all the things that we saw. But because we had address verification, the phone verification, and the name checks, it was much harder for them to get through. And that verified that we did the 80/20 of mitigating the problem before launch.
Did you ever like track down where the hacker was from or where they found out about the company, like Reddit?
Great
I feel like
question.
Reddit's
Well,
the danger
yeah,
zone.
Reddit is an interesting one because while yeah there's a lot of anonymity, it's also a place where a lot of people find their trusted payment platform. So it's actually a really good growth mechanism for us as well.
Yeah.
All we knew was that they were from specific locations.
Mhm.
But even then they had VPNs, right? So it wasn't consistent. And sometimes they changed their locations here and there. So that was the most that we knew, like the geo location. Don't know where they found out about us.
Mhm. I think I've probably been reading too many like online scammer and catfish novels, but I was just like, "Ugh, you should have hunted them down and been like, I know who you are, Nicholas Robles."
That'd be so fun.
Okay, so obviously on a launch day, I'm sure that you had a bump of interest. So how did you keep doing these manual checks, or did you do them like lesser in batches? Did you notice any other scammers that you caught during those checks, or not really?
Yeah. The main ones were the ones that came the day before.
Hmm.
So as mentioned, we caught them. The manual checks were really more, we knew it was going to be a sustainable thing in the long term, right? So it was really more, okay, we're going to launch in the next week. We need to find like quick fixes. Really, those manual checks became a little bit more automated. We had some heuristics on um, how to catch certain bad actors,
Hmm.
built it into our system. Over time, we found out, I guess it was also an experiment, this activation, right? This promo thing. Over time, you're like, actually, maybe we're okay. We're fine without the promo. So eventually we didn't have the promo anymore. But it was actually a good way for us to get like an initial set of users that trusted us and then eventually went on Reddit and talked about us and just got kind of good word of mouth, and that actually helped with activations.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm curious, like, what did work? I mean, how did you see the stickiness or attention of the people who use this promo? You said that that turned into some users and promoters, but what's something that you decided to do next in order to try and get them to that first moment of
Yeah.
withdrawing?
Interestingly, I think when people talk about PR, it's a mixed bag. Like sometimes PR works to get an initial influx and then it kind of tapers off. For us, we got the initial PR, so that big launch in September was really helpful for us because a lot of people were coming back to us and being like, "Hey, you look like a promising company, but are you a scam?" So
Mm,
thinking that we were scamming them into this product, right? Because they couldn't, before we launched, they couldn't find any information about what Parallax was, if they should trust this very new website. And so I think that's what contributed to like low activations. People didn't trust us enough to put money into their accounts. After we had this launch, while we did have like an initial spike of interest and then it waned, we found that it actually gave a really big bump to the number of signups and eventually like, the activations in our product because people were now really trusting us enough without the need for promos
mhm.
actually deposit funds and then get to the aha moment, a moment and withdraw. So that PR was helpful. And then I mentioned Reddit. Initially, we had some folks in our company create Reddit accounts and just lurk in all these payments websites, or sorry, payment subreddits, or people who were freelancers and talking about payment platforms and be like, hey, I heard about this company called Parallax. Want to try it out? So that helped with initially sparking those conversations, and then eventually those users did it for us on our behalf. And then referrals, just doubling down on that word of mouth.
Totally. I'm curious, for finance companies, other than draining your cash, do scammers scamming you harm your reputation on like any? I'm sure there's websites that say like, how trustworthy is this financial platform or service?
That's a great question. I think that it's less, and again, this is kind of hard to know because a lot of them are anonymous, right? When it comes to those reviews, I actually think they're mostly legitimate actors that genuinely had a bad experience. Bad experience because of the compliance reason. Where, for example, we got really deep into compliance because we became a money service business. So we actually had to build our own KYC. And so I know a lot about compliance now. But one really annoying thing from the consumer perspective is when someone is like, hey, we had to tell people, hey, I'm so sorry, we have to close your account and we cannot tell you the reason why. And from our perspective, it's not because we want to be annoying and frustrating for our user. We want to do the opposite of that. But it's because we cannot tell them a potential reason why they close their account in case they're a bad actor and they game the system.
Well, of course, you're just giving like a hacker more information.
We're giving them hints. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And they can tell their other bad actor friends, hey, like, this is the reason why my account got closed. Make sure you don't do this so you can continue to stay on the platform. And so I think that's more of the byproduct of these bad actors coming into our system. We have to have certain tight restrictions, which then affect actually legitimate actors. And that's probably the case for some of the bad reviews on fintech platforms.
Okay, let's go back to the retro, because I think that's really useful. There's like some things where you got kind of lucky, like putting them in a separate account. Brilliant. You only lost about $2,000, you said?
Brilliant. Yes.
Not 2 million. Thank God. So yeah, what were some of the things that were like few, or you said like, oh, good thing we made these decisions beforehand? And then some of the other things that you looked back on to change for the future?
Yeah. Certainly that separation of accounts. Yeah, imagine if we connected our entire treasury, then we would have lost like $4 million.
Your seed round, yeah.
So that's one. I think second was we built what I called this big red button, which we just smash that, and then it closes all transactions. It stops all signups in case any of these emergencies happen. Other things we got lucky on. It's a good thing my co-founder was checking his messages at the time that I messaged him. It's a good thing I would just so happened to be checking all these different Slack channels and alerts at the time that I did. And it's a good thing it happened the week before launch rather than the day before launch or the day of launch. So it actually did strengthen our launch day. But lessons as a result of that, and knowing that we got lucky on a couple fronts, the next time we did a big launch, we put ourselves in the shoes of bad actors. Super excited about the potential of this new feature, but how could bad actors actually game the system? I think it's helpful for companies even outside of fintech, right? Just thinking about all the different risks and mitigations and doing that exercise. But certainly helpful for us where we're moving a lot of money, a lot of other people's money, and you want to make sure that we're protecting our users who are on the platform, but also us as a company. Because if we go above a threshold of bad actors gaming our system, then it also puts alerts on different partner banks that we're working with. They're going to trust us less. So we always ask, okay, how can bad actors game the system? Given the specific risks, are we willing to take on this type of risk, or do we want to put in additional mitigations? Because we're not going to get everything like 100%, but getting to the 80-20 of it is always helpful. I understood the value of proper KYC. And yeah, I mentioned at the time it was our candidly my first foray into like deep fintech. Since then, we became an MSB. We worked with a lot of compliance teams. We've worked with a lot of different vendors and partner banks. I was studying to get a compliance, I wouldn't say license, compliance like
certification or something. Yeah.
So now I know a lot about compliance.
It's what a fun thing to know a lot about.
Very niche, but I quite enjoy it. And I know why certain fintechs make certain decisions in the way that they do because they're wearing this compliance hat. And I also now know the value of it because we've also seen other bad actors over time come into our system and do all these really interesting tricks to maneuver, to try to bypass our gates. It can get really scary. Like these are actually criminals all over the web trying to find small fintechs and game their system, right? So just now I know and have felt the importance of good onboarding, but also balancing that with like a good user experience, right? Because there's a trade-off with doing too many checks and then your good actors are feeling the brunt of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, as mentioned, trusting but verifying. Now, when you work with a vendor, we do a lot of due diligence with them. So we have a whole process of doing due diligence. And it's also making sure we actually go through, well, now we have our own KYC process, but we're actually like really asking, again, the question of what would bad actors do to game the system of our vendors? And what are all the compliance checks that they do? And verifying for ourselves that what
Sufficient.
Efficient and meets our standards and like caters to our users. Because the opposite problem also happens where they have all these compliance checks, but then they also don't know who our users are. And so there are certain edge cases where our users are from, I'll take an extreme example. Our users are from the Philippines, but they don't allow multiple middle names. And there's nuance to certain checks, right? So you've had a couple of those edge cases come in where there's also a cultural nuance that we have to check and verify with our vendors.
Yeah, it's kind of like in the SATs when they give you like 12 characters max for a last name.
Yeah.
And there are many countries and cities that do not follow that at all.
Cultural nuance is important.
That's really interesting. Okay, so because Parallax is acquired, and so you don't have to necessarily worry about giving hackers hints.
Right.
What were some of the other things afterwards that you caught with these stronger systems? I'm really curious.
Okay. Give me a sec. I'll give an example. On this line of like the cultural nuance. We did name checks. And so we did this name checks where we had to check, okay, you sent us this government ID and you gave us a first and last name when you're onboarding. And then we do a basic check of like, does it match? An interesting thing is a lot of mostly women are affected by false positives because people get married.
Yeah.
And for the most part, in most cultures, women are the ones who change their names. And so we had a lot of folks actually get flagged or have to go through our manual reviews because they had name mismatches. And to mitigate that, we had to actually ask for their marriage certificates and verify that they were actually married. So that was an interesting...
I don't think I have that on hand.
Yeah.
That's something I need to do.
Interesting, like cultural nuance. Some folks in certain countries, like I want to say Egypt, they have a different way of something along the lines of like it's not first name, last name. It's like it's flipped.
Oh, which is kind of like in China, they have that too.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But we're matching on first name to last. Right. And so it was interesting, just like all these cultural nuances that popped up per new country that we onboarded that we had to actually put into our KYC system. So we use Persona, which is an amazing product. And I'm so glad we use them for our KYC because they made it really easy for us to catch these edge cases and then build it into our automations.
Super interesting. All these like little nuances of internationalizations that maybe people don't think of until they have to experience something like this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which makes any new country that you want to onboard that much more challenging. Very intentional as well.
Okay, I'm curious if another company wants to do a promo with cash. Like obviously it worked very well for Coinbase, but doesn't work for everyone. What situation do you think it might work in? And then of course, other than just like straight up tighten your KYC, any other recommendations you'd have for them?
Yeah. Straight up yep. Definitely tied to KYC. I do think we saw initially it was helpful for our initial set of activations. So it worked for us in the initial set of activations and initially just getting a core set of users that could try the product. So if you're a very new fintech that has yet to establish trust in your user base, you're testing, experimenting in different personas, I think it could be useful there. At some point, even if you're a bit more mature, I think it could work, but now you have to think about how it feeds into your CAC and unit economics. I'm sure there are other Wise, for example, does have more of like a referral promo. If you refer X number of users, then you get like free money into your account. So I think it works there because they've been able to like gather enough data that every X user is worth this much, and the promo makes sense to like send money over. So yeah, I think starting out is still helpful to just get an initial set of trusted users, and then eventually, once you have enough data, it could still be helpful, but making sure that it's baked into unit economics. If you are going to be starting off when you're a first-time fintech, KYC for sure. I think having this emergency fail-safe, you can easily just click a button and make sure that everything's paused and bad actors can't continue to come in. We actually also forgot to mention this. We did add in better alerts and metrics. So I just happened to be looking at our signups channel, but we built in more automated alerts of, okay, if there's a big flux of users coming in and there's something sketchy about them, then we'll actually get proactive alerts instead of me having to check something. So bake that in before you launch a promo or even before you do any big launch. And that also helps catch people while you're asleep.
Yeah.
Like us. Yeah.
And the separate account.
Oh, yes. And the separate account.
Yes.
Yeah.
I still think of that as a smart one.
That's
okay, I love to ask as my final question about taste, go along with the name, taste and tactics, and kind of how that folds into launches, into launch, all the ups and downs that it takes in a business to get something off the ground. So was there any time that you used kind of your gut and intuition over concrete data to just say like, no, I really think this is the move?
Ooh. Okay. Give me a sec.
Yeah.
Okay. I actually think the inception of Parallax was
Nice.
similar. Or sorry. Yeah. Okay. I think the inception of Parallax is So the first version of Parallax is completely different. We were a B2B accounting platform for crypto companies. This was at end of 2022, when we had closed our raise. And end of 2022 was when the whole FTX SBF thing happened. Silicon Valley Bank also went down around that time. So a lot of things were happening in the crypto ecosystem that basically led us to realize that our market, which are crypto companies, was dying. And we were experiencing less interest in the problem that we were solving. For some reason, so a lot became like a very bearish, it became crypto bear market, right? But I stuck around because I still believed in this whole payments space. And this is at the time before stablecoins. Right now it's in this hype cycle, but at the time, not a lot of people were believing that stablecoins was going to be a thing. Especially because it depegged and especially because all these things were happening in the crypto ecosystem. But we continued to talk to some of our adjacent users from the initial version of Parallax. And these were the freelancers and the people getting hit by really large fees and really slow transactions. And we talked to a handful of them, did some user research, and it was, I guess we got qualitative data, but we didn't necessarily have the quantitative data to be like, okay, we're In fact, we had the opposite, right? Like crypto market was going down, stablecoin activity was going down, everything was going down as it related to like stablecoins as a whole. But there was this belief that stablecoins is going to be a thing in the future. And we basically took a bet on that and applied what we were hearing from our users or potential users and what we knew about stablecoins and wallets and being in the crypto space and paired that to solve their problem. So I think Parallax was some bet into the future of stablecoins, and turned out to be right. Now that stablecoins is actually seeing a lot of excitement these days.
Of that. You looked ahead, and it's tough when looking ahead. There's always like believers and haters. There's people who are optimistic and pessimistic. There's people who don't believe in a new concept or innovation or product. And you just have to decide, like, am I a believer? Am I not a believer? Take all that data in and then follow your gut. So
Yeah.
I love it. That's awesome. Thank you so much. And man, a little part of me still wants to like hashtag find Nicholas Robles, but thank you so much. I know, it's just so funny. Maybe it'll be a cereal situation. But thank you so much, Mika. It's been so much fun. This is great. And yeah, we have known each other for like probably 10 years now. So very fun. Appreciate you being here and loved hearing this story.
Thanks as well, Shriya.
Bye.
Bye.
Love that episode with Mika, and really excited to share some of my top 3 takeaways from the episode. So the first thing that I really appreciated was I think that I learned, especially in fintech, you really want to think of the worst case scenarios beforehand, and honestly kind of have that paranoia that's really useful in startups. She put themselves in the shoes of the scammers. Of course, you can't assume with every type of product there might be scammers, but think of all of your financial systems, your transactions, basically any way that a customer signs up for your product, because ultimately we're businesses, and how they might abuse those. And so even if it's something free, but it's maybe a social product, think about, have we really prevented all the issues we can think of? And then, of course, once you have quite a few customers, people will think of their own things. And so take that into account and be a little bit paranoid. The second thing that I took away that I thought was really useful was beta testing a promotion beforehand. They made sure to test this with a few users beforehand so that it was ready once they had to launch, and the PR lined up, which led to a bump in signups. So as Mika said, like, thank goodness this happened a week out instead of the day of, because that made it a lot easier to make the fixes beforehand, contain the issue, have downtime for a very short amount of time, just 1 to 2 hours, with a much smaller set of users. So also, clearly, I thought that this was brilliant, but any promotion involving free money, have that from a separate small fund and not your main one. And then finally, trust but verify. I thought it was really crucial that, like, she wanted to trust this vendor. She thought that they had everything buttoned up. They had been around for longer. They did their research, but honestly, you maybe want to do some more research. You can't assume that, especially for something so high stakes as KYC for a fintech product, you can't assume that they really do have the same standard that you do for preventing issues. So you have to look into it. And I thought that that was really useful information to take away whenever you're building your own product. Thanks again to Mika for joining.
Taste and Tactics is available on every major podcast platform and at Taste and Tactics on LinkedIn, X, TikTok, and Instagram. Thank you to our producer, Simran Honda. See you next week.